Good afternoon, it's Nicholas from Aora Gaming, and today we got a brand new Pendulum Flip Burn Counter archetype reveal for us today, and I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I felt like Konami just went and grabbed all the bad archetype mechanics, besides, of course, Ritual, and of course, besides Gemini, and said, what if we made a meta by putting them all together? And that's what we got here today. We have Enneacraft. This is the brand new archetype revealed out of DBPR. If you don't know, this is the next deck build set we're getting that has the new Hecatonchires Illusion archetype. They're like a Greek archetype that we got revealed a couple of days ago. But now we have the Earth Machine flip archetype for this set. Now, this archetype is very strange and very powerful. But however, it has some of the strongest effects with the hardest restrictions this game has ever seen. It's going to be really hard to see if these deck is going to be meta or it's going to be a complete flop. So let's actually talk about it. So once again, think of this archetype as if Shaddolls and pendulums that revolve around spell counters and sub-terrors and volcanics had a baby, and that baby pulled a gun at you. That's kind of what this archetype is in a nutshell. So let's talk about it. All the monsters have the effect that if you can reveal them in hand, spell summon one monster from your hand in face down defense position. You can't spell summon the turn you activate this effect except face down defense position monsters. Meaning, basically with all the monsters in this archetype, they're going to lock you from accessing not only the extra deck, but pendulum summoning, which is kind of crazy. This is a pendulum archetype, everything but name. So like it has scales, it has pendulum effects in the pendulum zones. However, this deck does not pendulum summon. The only way you're ever spell summoning monsters is with their effect to reveal them in hand, and then spell summon any monster from hand and face down defense position. Because of the restriction, you don't have access to any extra deck monsters, you don't have the ability to pendulum summon, and you don't have the access of spell summoning any monsters in attack position, which is a huge restriction. But due to that, Konami has given this archetype some of the strongest abilities in the game. For example, they can spell summon any monster from their hand in face down defense position, meaning they have access to all the best flip monsters that Konami has blessed us with in the last 25 years. The Crawler Boss Monster, Pot of the Forbidden, Guard Dog, Whirlwind Weasel. All these monsters are just free spell summons from hand as long as you have it ever Enneacraft monster. You can just spell summon them for free onto the field and face down defense position, which is pretty powerful. And I think that's the reason why they added this restriction in order to make them a little balanced, because this archetype has the potential to FTK. If you remember earlier in this video, I said this archetype is a burn archetype as well. So there is some burning shenanigans going on. So let's talk about it. So first things first, we have Enneacraft Aora. There's 4 low-level Earth Enneacraft monsters, and they all have the same scale effect. They all have the effect that each time a monster is flip face up, you place a Sequidius counter on this card. That's how they're going to be burning you. The second effect is that you can pay 900 life points, reveal 3 Enneacraft cards from deck to hand. Your opponent randomly picks one to add to your hand, then they shuffle the rest in the back of the deck. Basically, it's like Cleaforce Scout mixed with Monarch's Return as a really powerful card. I might be wrong with the Monarch spell. It's the Monarch spell that reveals 3 Monarchs and you get to randomly pick one. You know what I'm talking about. I think it's Return, but I could be mistaken. Basically, they're all Cleaforce Scouts, all the level 1s, which are pretty amazing. They also build up Sequidius counters anytime a monster is flipped face up, which is how the deck burns you, which is kind of scary. Let's actually talk about what they do while they're face down in defense position. So I already revealed they're all effects that allow you to spell summon themselves from the hand or any monster from the hand as long as you reveal them once per turn. However, when they're on the field and face down defensive position, they all have the effect that when your opponent activates a card activation, they all have different ones that require, you basically allow them to change them face up to add a Enneacraft card from deck to hand. So they're all mini Rotas as well. They allow you to add any Enneacraft monster from deck to hand when they're flipped face up. However, each of the level 1s have different ones they summon. So Enneacraft Aora basically says, hey, when your opponent activates a monster effect in hand, quick effect changes a card to face up defense position, then add an Enneacraft monster from deck to hand, or any card from Enneacraft from your deck to hand. Also, if this card is flipped face up, destroy one monster your opponent controls. So that is a pretty powerful effect. Next, we have Enneacraft B Albaza. Now, it has the same effects as all the other ones. However, it works a little differently than Enneacraft lovely Aora. Enneacraft Albaza has the ability that when your opponent activates a card or effect that includes adding cards from deck to hand, quick effect changes card to face up defense position, then add one Enneacraft card from deck to hand, and when this card is flipped face up, banish one random card in your opponent's hand until the end of the turn. So they all revolve around your opponent's interactions. However, based on where the interaction is, they have different effects. So this one messes with your opponent's hand when they add cards from deck to hand. And the other one says, hey, when your opponent activates a monster effect on field, destroy a monster on field, which is pretty good. Next, we have Enneacraft F Formula. This is another level 1 Earth Machine Pendulum effect monster, 100 attack, 1000 defense. The scale effect is what I already revealed already. Its monster effect is the same as all the others. However, it lurks a little differently. When your opponent activates a card effect that includes special summoning of monsters, quick effect, you can change this set card to face up defense position to add one Enneacraft card from deck to hand. And this card is flipped face up, negate the effects of one effect monster your opponent controls until the end of the turn. So this one is a monster negate, which is pretty cool, kind of like an imperm. So if you haven't been following along, we have revealed 3 monsters so far. They all have the effect that they're basically Cleaforce Scout in the Pendulum zone, while anytime a monster is flipped face up, they add counters to them as pendulum counters. And then they also all have the effect that when your opponent does an action, they flip themselves face up to then add a Enneacraft card from deck to hand, and they all have the ability to reveal themselves in hand to spell summon one monster from hand and face down defense position. However, it then locks you from spell summoning anything but face down defense position monsters for the rest of the turn. So that's how they all share their effects, and the reason why I'm summing this up is because I don't want to get you confused. Anyway, they all have really cool effects. We have one more level 1 that has all the same effects, but however, it works a little differently. This is Enneacraft Aora. It has the ability that when your opponent activates a card effect in the graveyard of banishment, quick effect changes card to face up defense position, add one Enneacraft card from deck to hand. Then if this card is flipped face up, shuffle 3 cards your opponent's graveyard or banishment back in the deck. So you have graveyard interruption, hand interruption, monster negation, and monster destruction, all in the low-level Enneacraft monsters. These aren't even the boss monsters. These are just the Rhoda monsters for the scales. Now let's talk about the boss monsters. They're all level 9s. They're all level 9 light machines, and they're all flip monsters. Again, they have the same effect in the hand, when you can reveal them in hand to spell summon any monster from your hand and face down defense position, but you're locked from spell summoning the rest of the turn except face down defense position monsters. However, their scale effects are different than the low level ones. While they all share the effect that each time a monster is flipped face up, they add a Sequidius counter onto them, the boss monsters have the effect in the scale that at the end of the battle phase, if an Enneacraft card is in your other Pendulum zone, you can target one monster your opponent controls with a lower attack than this card and destroy it. All these monsters with that effect have 3,000 attack, meaning during the end phase of a battle, if this card is in your scale or any of the other boss monsters are in your scale, they allow you to pop a monster with 3,000 or less attack, which is pretty solid. Now let's actually talk about what they do on the field. So when your opponent activates a card or effect in response to the activation of cards or effects quick effect, you can change this card into face up defense position, return up to 3 cards on the field back to hand. Each time a card is added to your opponent's hand by their card effect, while you control this face-up flip monster, inflict 900 damage to them. So we have reached our burn condition. So remember, anytime we get a counter, we are like burning them. Now, I haven't explained how we're burning them yet, but just know that the counters they're like burn counters. So now we have a boss monster that burns them for every time they add a card from their hand, which is pretty powerful, especially once you see how the burn shenanigans works. So let's keep going. So that was Leo. Let's talk about the other boss monsters. We also have Enneacraft Pixie. This is a level 9 light machine effect monster. 3,000 attack, 2,500 defense. Same scale effects where they like destroy a monster during the battle phase based on its attack. Also, each time a monster is flip face up, place a Squidius counter. Like I said, all monsters in this archetype have the ability to reveal themselves and spell summon any monster from your hand in face down defense position. And they all have the effect that when your opponent activates something, they respond in different ways. So let's actually read what this monster does on field. When your opponent activates a card effect on field, quick effect, you can flip this card face up, then... Oh wait, no, my apologies. When your opponent activates a card effect that targets cards you control, quick effect, you change this set card to face up defense position, negate the effect, then banish one random card from your opponent's hand. Then, while this card is face up, your opponent can't target cards on the field or in graveyard with card effects while you control this monster that is flipped face up, which is a pretty powerful effect. Basically, this gives you targeting protection from grave and on field while it's flipped face up, while also allowing you to basically get a negation, which is pretty powerful. It negates an effect that targets, and it banishes a random card from your opponent's hand, which is just really, really strong. Next, we have Enneacraft Eratifa. This is the flagship of the archetype. If you remember when he first got revealed in card art, this was the one they revealed. So this is technically their pseudo boss monster. It's a level 9 light machine, flip monster, pendulum, 3,000 attack, 2,500 defense, 0 scale. Every monster in this archetype is 0 scale. That's why they can't pendulum summon. Also, it locks you into pendulum summoning. It has the same scale effect as all the big ones. Battle phase, destroy a monster with the lowest attack as long as it has 3,000 or less. And also, each time a monster is flipped face up, add a Squidius counter. It also has the effect that you reveal this card in hand, spell summon any monster in your hand and face down in defense position, but you're locked into spell summoning that way for the rest of the turn. Then it has the effect of when your opponent activates a card effect on the field during this turn. Quick effect. You can change this set card to face up defense position, negate the activation if you do destroy that card. If this card is flipped face up, change all monsters your opponent controls to face down defense position. Their battle positions cannot be changed. So not only does this negate and destroy a card on field, but also when it flips face up, it Book of Moons everything in a form of what's it called? Quaking Mirror Force. It basically Quaking Mirror Forces your opponent's field while negating and destroying a monster, which is pretty powerful. Next, we have Enneacraft Acron. This is the last of the monsters. So there's 4 boss monsters, 4 little monsters. Same scale effect as a level 9 light machine pendulum monster, 3,000 attack, 2,500 defense, scale 0. I'm not going to read its pendulum effect again. I'm not going to read its effect to spell summon any monster from hand and face down defense position because I already went over this. However, its effect is that when your opponent activates a card or effect that would destroy cards on your field, quick effect, change this card into face of defense position. Enneacraft spells and monsters you control can be destroyed by card effects for the rest of the turn. Each time a monster is sent to your opponent's graveyard while this card is flipped face up, inflict 900 damage to them. So we have 2 boss monsters that are inflicting 900 damage for either when they add cards from their hand or when a card is sent to their opponent's graveyard. That is disgusting. So there's a lot of burning, and 900 is a big number. 4 900 burns is 3,600. That's almost half their life points. If you activate these effects 8 times, you win the game. Because 9 times 8 is 81. Am I wrong there? No, it might be 9 times. 9 times 9 is 81. So as long as you get these resolving 9 times, you will win the game. And that's not counting the field spell, which is kind of the heart and soul of the deck, because this is your win condition. This is the field spell, Enquapolis, the Squidius City. And it has the ability, it's always treated as an Enneacraft card, so you can always reveal it using your Enneacraft Rota monsters, add it to your hand, and then it has the ability. You can target any number of Enneacraft Pendulum monsters you control, return them to the hand. The reason why you do this is because unlike most flip archetypes, they don't flip themselves face down. In order to get them back face down, you're going to need to add them back to hand to re-summon them. So that's kind of like their drawback. Their second effect is if an Enneacraft Pendulum monster you control is flipped face up during the main phase, you can return it to the hand or place it into your Pendulum zones, one of them. So basically allows you to add them back to hand or place them into your scales after resolving their effect, which is pretty solid. Its third effect is once returned during the end phase, remove all Sequidius counters from cards you control, and if you do, inflict 900 damage to your opponent for each one. That is what's the disgusting part about this archetype. Basically what this archetype is, it's a flip archetype that is using scale effects in order to gain advantage, but it is not a pendulum archetype in that sense. It is truly a flip burn archetype that wants to flip as many times as possible and control the game and burn your opponent out with the field spell. Its boss monsters help you burn, but this field spell basically says every time you have a counter, remove it, do 900 damage. You get 4 counters removed, you're doing 36. That means as long as you have 2 scales, as long as you get 2 flip summons, you'll guarantee yourself 2 counters. And don't forget, this card is during either player's end phase, meaning you can do it on your turn or your opponent's turn. It says once per turn during the end phase. So basically, you can go first, burn your opponent by flipping a whole bunch of monsters up and down. Then on your opponent's turn, burn them some more with the monsters. And then during the end phase, kill them. Pretty powerful stuff. And then finally, the last card revealed for now is Enneacraft Release. It's a normal spell card. Go ahead and activate this card's name once a turn. Place 1 Enneacraft Pendulum monster from your deck into the pen zone. And this card is in your graveyard. Except the turn to sit there. Banish it to add 1 face-up Enneacraft monster from your extra deck to hand. The reason why that second effect matters is because this deck cannot Pendulum summon. This deck, besides Enneacraft Release, has no way of retrieving the monsters that are killed in battle or by card effect. Because when a monster dies and their Pendulum scales, or just dies in general, they go to the Pendulum zone. They go face up. They don't go to the graveyard. So this is the way of retrieving them for the archetype, which is not bad. Overall, this archetype has huge potential. It is very scary, and it will probably maybe be meta. We're not really sure. It depends on how consistent it can get its burn off. All the effects seem pretty strong, and they're all all the baby ones are Rotas. All the big ones have really powerful effects. Even the little ones have little powerful effects. They're not only Rotas in scale, but they're Rotas when they're flip face up. And they have effects that mess with your opponent's hand, or mess with their graveyard, or destroy or negate monsters on field. There's a lot going for this archetype, and all it takes is 1 or 2 more cards to make it an FTK. All it takes is 1 or 2 more combos to figure out how to get enough Sequidius counters onto your Pendulum monsters, and you can just win the game off that, which is pretty disgusting and pretty strong. So ultimately, in the end of the day, we're just going to have to see how this works and how this deck is going to be playing going forward. I will not be surprised if an FTK brews from this. And if so, I'm not sure how Konami is going to balance that, because the whole archetype revolves around the burn. And I don't know how to remove that. Anyway, I hope you all enjoy. Don't do anything stupid. See you on the next one, and bye-bye.